some general guidelines when it comes to that answer is if you're going to be leveraging a device for work, typically you want to make sure that device is used by the person who needs to produce work. And if you can, have avoid having your children and spouse and everyone else use the same device. For many companies who may not have mobile device management as a solution, they still rely on VPN, et cetera. The company needs to invest in time and experience trying to lock down and secure that device as best they can and tune it as best they can to support the work operations. And so it's pretty inherent and important that people kind of maintain the sanctity of that device if they can. When it comes to how to connect and manage multiple devices, there's a few basic ways to do it, and one sort of geeky way, and it's fun to talk about. I think with the advent of everyone has a Wi-Fi device or Wi-Fi router in their home. Some key areas are using device prioritization. That's something that almost every modern Wi-Fi router has. So you have to log into the admin interface, and there's a section in there in many different places depending on the vendor. But where you can actually say, okay, well, in this house, I have 10 devices. Out of those 10, I want to prioritize to make sure that the traffic goes to these 3, one of which would be your work device, for instance. Or if you and your spouse or even kids are in the same house and they all have work, which device is super important that you can't have go down, no matter what. Use it, again, depending on what your available bandwidth is. So you can actually prioritize and assign that at the router level pretty quickly. It takes a few seconds. And the changes happen almost immediately, which is a good way to go. Another one is ensuring that you have proper coverage in your own home. A lot of folks say, well, we're going to have Wi-Fi downstairs in the family room, and here's where our router's set up. But typically, people, if they're on multiple streams, which I am in my household, for instance, I'm on conference calls all day, and now my girls are on remote learning classes and things like that for school. And so they have to each be in separate rooms. And so they go upstairs to their rooms, and they didn't have the best coverage in the world, and they didn't really have a need in the past. So how do I get them there? Some of that is making sure my router's placed appropriately so I can get the best coverage possible. I've also invested in a mesh network the other day. So what that allows me to do is distribute out the Wi-Fi presence throughout my house, so I don't have to deal with any kind of drop in service no matter where I'm at. So it took me 30 minutes to deploy, and I'm good to go. And I've solved that challenge. A more geeky way, and what you'll find is that more and more of your neighbors have spun up these devices, Wi-Fi routers, et cetera. So if you look at and try to connect to a Wi-Fi network, you're going to see a growing list in many cases of tons of different routers with all kinds of funky names. And you got to choose the best one for the group. But you also see next to it a lot of times, depending on the interface, you'll see exactly what frequency, what range they're actually trying to connect to from a radio perspective. And a lot of folks who don't know better will leave it at default. And default for a lot of these routers is, they'll have a number of a channel, and you see all these devices kind of popping up in the same channel oftentimes. Not everybody can see this, but for those who can, it's a good thing to look at. So what you don't want to be is on the same channel as everybody else. That can cause some contention on your radio feed. That can also slow your signal down and ultimately affect your performance to your device. And so if you select something that's unique, great. Another way to go is to set it to auto. And what it'll look for, the device kind of looks for, the stronger feed that's available in your area. It'll automatically set the channel to support that. And you're pretty much off and running. Let the device manage itself, but not every device can do that. So it's something to look into. And again, it's in the advanced settings, typically in your Wi-Fi settings in your